So for you, but to get to where you're at, I know it just doesn't happen. Like there had to be some valleys or some struggles you went through, some battles. So where did it kind of start for you in your life?
I stepped into, became a model when I was 21. And with that came a whole other thing, because when you only get validated the way you look, it puts a lot of pressure on you. I was able to move to New York, signed with a great agency. But it was a very interesting time because, I always wanted to help other people in a sense. I always was a nice guy, and then ended up being pretty much a people pleaser for the most part of my adulthood. If I tell the person who sits across from me everything he or she wants to hear, they must be nice to me. I always was like, okay, if I'm a nice guy and I look the way they want me to look, I'm going to do well. It was just one of those interesting times in my life where I wasn't connected to myself whatsoever. Everything was focused around the way I look on the outside. The empty part of that was really that nobody sincerely cared about for who I am inside as a person.
When life is sweet, say thank you and celebrate. And when life is bitter, say thank you and grow. That's a quote that I read earlier today, and it came to me before this podcast, and I wanted to ask your perspective on that. Like, what does that mean to you?
Well, it's like, enjoying life the way it is, and whatever comes on your way, you have to kind of accept it with open arms, the good and the bad, because I do believe in God, and people always chase a mountaintop.
Yeah.
But we can never forget that you have to go through a valley in order to get there, So, and life throws you, or God gives you certain challenges in life. That's how I look at it, that make you grow, And this is what you just said. And once you're up on the mountaintop, we have to enjoy that, of course.
Yeah.
But also enjoy the valley. And that's a hard part for most people, because we always want to be in the sunshine and rainbows all day, but it's not really realistic. And even people who perhaps have all the success they were always dreamed of, whether it's money, cars, houses, dream wife, kids, and so forth, they still go through struggles, So it's really the times when it's a little bit cloudy, perhaps it's raining and there's a thunderstorm, when we grow the most. And when I feel for myself, when I really appreciate to be just present with myself, and then really taking that and enjoying every day the fullest. And it really comes back to just be here now,
That's beautiful. I mean, you're absolutely right. I love the visual when you said you have to go through a valley in order to get up the mountain, right? The valleys come with the journey up the mountain.
Yeah.
Right. And those valleys can be different things. What is like one of the valleys in your life as you were trying to get up this mountain to where you're at now? Because honestly, and we'll talk about like the work you're doing and all that in a minute, but you're doing amazing work. Like you're helping people, you're impacting people. You have an energy that makes people feel like cared and heard, and just like, and that alone is a gift. All right. So I could honestly say that you're a person that brings value to the world and is successful. However people define that, in my eyes, that's what that is. And it doesn't need to mean you have like hundreds of millions of dollars and all this stuff. That actually comes when you're in your purpose and you're doing good. It will come. So for you, but to get to where you're at, I know it just doesn't happen. Like there had to be some valleys or some struggles you went through, some battles. So where did it kind of start for you in your life?
I mean, I feel it, it started as early on where I'm from Germany. I grew up in a village with 120 people. So my dad was a butcher. My mom worked in a bakery. We were 4 kids. I'm the only boy. I have 3 sisters. And, growing up, there was never really a lot of money. So we always made it work. I started working when I was 13 to make some money for myself. So, and with that, when you never really have access to a lot of money, traveling and so forth, it's very limiting in a sense where I was told I finished school when I was 16. That's what I did. And then I started working as a mechanic. Knowing, back then you have the TV and all those things. There's a whole other world out there. And in my gut feeling, my intuition was always there. There's something bigger out there. So one of the struggles was really always holding on to that feeling and being like, okay, I can actually make something out of myself. And it doesn't really matter where I'm coming from or how much money my parents had and so forth. And it was kind of, I remember when I was in school, my dad, we wouldn't drive a nice car and nothing. So it was kind of like in a place where I was pretty ashamed of the where I came from. You know, I remember there was one, I might have been like in 8th grade or something, and my teacher, there was an English class, and he was like, "So what does your dad do?" And I didn't want to say he's a butcher, you know, because I was kind of embarrassed for that. So this whole upbringing kind of molded me in a way where it's like, I want to do more, I want to do better. And you know, when I was very young, and my dad was like, "So you want to do it?" I was like, "Oh, I want to be a butcher." You know, that's what you do when you're little.
Yeah.
And he was like, "You can't do anything, but you're not going to be a butcher because you're going to have a bigger life than I created." You know.
Wow.
So that led me then down to, I stepped into, became a model when I was 21. Started a little bit, and quit my full-time job when I was 23. And you know, I worked in a company where I supposed to work till I was 65.
Yeah.
And then you retire. That's what you do in Germany. You go 65 to 68 the most, and then you retire. So then you get ready for life, and then you actually live when you start living when you're 68 in a sense. Until then, you worked for that, you know. And I just knew that's not for me, so I quit my job. Everyone said, including my parents, I'm insane. By that time, my parents already were divorced, and there was also one of those struggles where I was very close to my mother growing up, and she basically left for another man, and I completely cut off the contact with her for about probably like 5.5, 6 years, which was very hard. And back then I started drinking a lot on the weekends, even throughout the week. So it was another one of those valleys, you know, I had to go through in order to understand myself. Started modeling, and with that came a whole other thing, because when you only get validated the way you look, it puts a lot of pressure on you. And I was very fortunate. I got discovered from back then one of the biggest photographers in the world. He believed in me. I became like one of his main guys. He shot for a while, and I was able to move to New York, had an amazing agency, signed with a great agency, which I'm still signed with. But it was a very interesting time, because, you know, when you get validated for the way you look, and I always wanted to help other people in a sense. I always was a nice guy, and then ended up being pretty much a people pleaser for the most part of my adulthood, because it's like, okay, if I tell the person who sits across from me everything he or she wants to hear, they must be nice to me. That was kind of like my driver. So, and then on top of that, I always was like, okay, if I'm a nice guy and I look the way they want me to look, I'm going to do well. But it's pretty much the opposite a lot of times. So when you chase something, which I did for a decade, chasing success, chasing the next big campaign, chasing like being in the limelight, whatever you want to call it, kind of like just pushing it away, because in a sense it creates a desperate energy around you, which I had for a very long time. And then people were like, you know, I did amazing work, and I had to switch agencies a few times, and my agents, they couldn't understand. They were like, I don't understand why you're not working. You should be working so much more. But it was just now I believe it was an energetic blockage I put on myself, because it's like, if you chase money, you know, then you'll never get it. Yeah. Or it's with everything in life, and we can get a little bit into it in a bit, what I'm doing now. And it's like, it was just one of those interesting times in my life where I wasn't connected to myself whatsoever. Yes, I did meditate. I started doing that in my late 20s, and that helped me to keep sane. And I started doing yoga and all those things, but it was always like more for an outcome. It's like, okay, if I do this now, then I'm going to look that way. And it was really, everything was focused around the way I look on the outside. And the empty part of that was really that nobody sincerely cared about for who I am inside as a person, as at least not in the industry. You know, of course I had friends, and some close friends and family, they cared about who am I. Yeah. But in general, it was just one of those things where I was like, if I keep doing that, it led me down to multiple physical and emotional burnouts, because you can only do extreme diets for a certain period of time. For example, you can do only HIIT workouts every day for a certain period of time till your body can't anymore. So I had those vicious cycles multiple times over a decade that led me down a rabbit hole. And eventually, you know, I was like, I can't really do that anymore, because otherwise I end up, my dad passed away 2000 21 in July. And after the divorce, when they divorced 2008, he never found love again, and he just was in a deep depression, which he numbed with alcohol, terrible food, and just not a very unhealthy lifestyle. And he developed rheumatoid arthritis. And seeing him falling apart was a big part of this learning curve for myself, because I was living in the States already. So I would go back home like twice, 3 times a year. And then when the pandemic hit, I went back for like 4 months to Germany, spent a lot of time, fortunately, with him. And just seeing him being the way he was. And I was like, okay, I don't want to follow those footsteps, you know. And now I know on an emotional level, there was a very big disconnect. And still is. My mom, she has a hard time. If I'm not saying I love you, she has a hard time saying that on her own, you know. If I'm not reaching out saying, hey, mom, I miss you really. I can't wait to see you and give you a big hug. She's not saying that either. So there's the way they got brought up in Germany, and a lot of people in that time, you know, it's just a very big disconnect on themselves, which leads then to a disconnect for the children, because the trauma, generational trauma, the emotions we hold as people, we pass on to our children, whether we want to realize it or not. And that's really what it is. So I made it a duty over the last year and a half to just like clean up my slate, you know, saying like, okay, how can I become the best version of myself? Not on a physical level, because it's the same thing when you chase a body or you chase a movement or you chase a diet. It eventually becomes a prison of yourself, you know. And it's like, I mean, you know better than anyone. It's once you're in this tight environment that I created for myself for so many years. It is very difficult to break out of that, because then I was getting frustrated, and I was blaming myself. Oh, I can never be X, Y, and Z. So you create a false reality around that. So it really all ended up being a big wake-up call about a little bit over a year ago, where I was, once again, I started running a lot, physically running away from my problems. And then ended up on a Sunday, I remember that, I went out, I was here in LA on a 2.5 hour beach run. And the next morning on the Monday, I woke up and I couldn't walk. My lower back was completely messed up. And it all stems from, it's emotionally connected to feeling not supported in your life from your parents, from my mom back then. And I was such a low on a physical, and then it ended up being an emotional low too, where I was really like, I want to do something different. I have to change. Otherwise it just like fall apart eventually. And that's really what led me down to what I'm doing now. You know, I did breath coach certifications in the past, nutrition, fitness. I trained some people, but it never really resonated with me on a deep level, meaning I didn't feel like I really make an impact in someone's life. Because when you look at the breath isolated, it's very difficult to explain that to people, to how important it is, you know. And the same with fitness and nutrition. It's just like, it's all about the way the person looks, you know. Back then people would come to me, oh, I want to have a 6-pack, oh, I want to lose weight. And it's like, it's all vanity based. So now what I'm doing now is basically, I look at the body, and everything is central nervous system regulated. So if your central nervous system is completely out of whack, completely shot, meaning you're constantly in fight or flight mode, sympathetic state, which most people are in our day and age, then you have a hard time relaxing. You have a hard time being in the present moment, and you're so disconnected from your body and your mind and your heart that you can't actually understand yourself. You can't really, you know.
So no matter how physically fit you are, if that's happening, it doesn't even matter. So like if you're just like, let's say, like you said, you're a person who just focuses on nothing but just working out your body, that's not enough. You have to also work out the inside, right?
100%. Because, you know, I see so many athletes, whether they're professional athletes or just want to call them weekend warriors, or just people who take care of themselves, really, you know, on the outside. Eventually what's going to happen if you have a disconnect to your emotional and your mind, what's going to happen is like you get injured eventually, because you can only go through the motions for so long, and then you push it, and then your body breaks. So there's this one saying, it's like eventually everything extreme eventually breaks, and it's very, very true. You know, and I always look at it now, I read a little bit about, I studied Buddhism a little bit, not too much, because I said I grew up Christian and I was a Catholic altar boy at one point, but it was all very extreme back then too. So I stepped away from that for a long time, and then I found God again about 2.5 years ago, and really dedicate my life around it. And it's the philosophy I'm living by, you know. But it's more, I can still look at other religion and take something out of it, read through it, and understand that it's all very much connected. It's all in the end of the day the same. Whether you call it Allah, whether you call it Buddha, whether you call it God, it doesn't really, in my opinion, doesn't matter. Because if someone wants to always say this is the way, you start pointing fingers, right? Yeah. So if I point one finger to someone, I have 3 fingers looking at myself. So the big question I ask everyone is like, what are those 3 fingers telling you? So there's a bigger message behind those 3 fingers than the one finger you're pointing, and there's a lot of disconnect in those 3 fingers towards yourself. Because if I want to press an ideology to someone else, there's something within myself I'm very insecure about potentially, or I'm just very disconnected. So, and that's pretty much how I look at the world right now.
And you're right. I'm the same way when it comes to religion. Like, I've studied many different ones, trying to figure out what do I believe in. In prison, I'm just looking for something to believe in, and I studied many different ones that I found. I'm the same way. It really all the same, right? It just depends. Everybody has their own titles and names, but it's all just like this. It's all about like energy, and it's all about, you know, just like beyond just what's on the surface. It's something deeper there, and whether you call it God or the field or Allah, like you said, definitely there's something there. So what do you say to the people who just like, I don't believe in God? Because I asked that because people asked me that question, and I always have a good answer for it, because I go back to my experience in solitary and how I felt God present and still do. What would be your response to those people?
Well, I always say, you don't have to, if you don't want to believe in God, that's your way of living. And that's okay. There's no right or wrong, there just is. And in the end of the day, we all know there's something bigger out there, because we here, something had to create that, right? Whether it's, some people like to call the universe higher power, and I have 0 problems with that. I have no judgment, because that's the number one thing. I don't want to judge people anymore for the way they perceive life in general, or the way they live life. It's more, I say, I'm here to help people to open a door, and with what I'm teaching, what I'm showing people, what I learned about myself, what I learned from mentors and so forth, the person is able to walk through that door and stay in that room, and that room is essentially their life. And it's really up to them whether they want to stay in that room, and if they choose to stay in that room, then they can build the room out as large and as beautiful as they want. And I'm here to open the door, because I don't believe we as humans supposed to like be there and hold someone's hands for the rest of their life. I look at it in a way where I'm like, okay, I want to have everyone telling me I'm ready to fly now. I'm okay. I can leave the nest. You put me in the nest. I grew my wings, and now I'm ready to fly, and I can stay in that room by myself. And it's really all I'm focusing on, because for a while I was very much focused on the word healing, and whether it's emotionally, trauma, and so forth. And then I realized it's the same thing. When you start chasing healing, you'll never be healed, because healing is something that happens along your life, along the way. And there's always something new coming into your life, and another valley that you learn from, and that you potentially have to heal from, quote unquote. But I don't really want to focus on that anymore. I say to people, okay, everyone's goal should be, you should have a North Star, and the North Star wants to be perfect health, productivity, and peak performance. So if I focus on those 3 things as my North Star, and I love myself enough to do the work on a daily basis, whether it's journaling, whether it's, okay, I take time to breathe, I take time to go to the sauna, or whatever it is. And we don't need anything external, really. All those biohacking things, it's like the icing on the cake, you know. We all have all the tools within ourselves, everything we need is within ourselves. And, you know, people, you probably see it, everyone is always like, so what's your diet like? That's the number one thing. If anyone is in shape, if someone is in really good shape, the number one thing people ask, so what are you eating?
True.
So
it's true.
It's so individualized. First of all, it comes back to genetics, and then it comes also like the environment you're living in, the ancestors and so forth. And I don't really like to overcomplicate it anymore. The bottom line is really, if you're connected to yourself and you're actually able to listen to your intuition, which I believe is just God talking through you, then you look at food and you know whether you should be eating it or not. You're able to know what kind of foods you eat. Of course, there needs to be somewhat of a education around that, meaning like, okay, eat whole foods, don't eat processed food, cut out all this shit that's in the world right now. But if you look at just like a whole food diet, you know when to eat what if you connect it to yourself. And that's the biggest part, because 99% of the people are disconnected. So they cannot listen to their intuition because they're not in the present moment. I can't listen to my intuition if I'm not present. So how can I be present is by breathing proper and taking the stress out of my body. Because if my body is 24/7 in fight or flight mode, which means tenth of thousands of years ago, that would mean someone is running away from a tiger every day of their life, every second of their life. So that's why you see, for example, in young men, testosterone is declining rapidly. Yeah, because the last thing you want to do if you run away from a tiger is having sex, for example. Then the digestion is off. Yeah, the last thing you want to do if you run away from a tiger is go to the bathroom. Everything is thrown off completely. So now for me, it's really like, how can I, in a simple, easy manner, how can I help as many people as possible with simple techniques, simple advice to get them back to a baseline level. And then from there, they can do whatever they want. If you want to run a marathon, go run a marathon. If you want to be really good in deadlifting, go and practice that. If you want to be a yogi, do that. But I want to create a little bit a voice and a movement around that. We have to strip away all those limiting beliefs around ourselves, and that we actually can really become anything we want as long as we believe in ourselves. But you only can believe in yourself when you're present in the moment. Otherwise, you're just chasing something else. And this movement, let's say it's a deadlift, becomes your life. So it's all just an add-on into your life. And don't do it to get validated by other people. Do it because you want to be strong and you want to feel what it's like to do that. So, and that's really the whole ideology around what I'm doing, is just like stripping away those false beliefs and making everyone believe that they can do anything, and just that they have to be present in the moment. Because otherwise, if I'm in fight or flight mode, people not even connected to their spouse, to their wife, that's why so many marriages are falling apart and the divorce rate is so high, because people are not connected. I mean, I've seen it in my family. My parents weren't connected to themselves, so they can't be connected to each other. It's more like, okay, we get married because it's time, we have this sort of age and this person seems right, so we're going to get married. But there's no deeper soul connection in a sense. So, and when problems arise, I mean, I see it, I'm getting married in 8 weeks, and we've been together. Thank you. We've been together almost 4 years. And the first 2 years, there was a lot of like banging heads against each other, because once the honeymoon phase is over, and there's a German saying, you say after 6 months you licked off all the honey around your mouth, and then real life you get a taste for what it's actually really is, And in that time, it was like we had a lot of arguments, fights, and so forth. And as the more we started working on ourselves, actually, the more we started understanding each other. Because if I know my partner, there's no difference between her and myself. We're all the same. We are one in the end of the day. We all made out of energy, right? And this is a part I constantly work on, because there's still triggers from childhood, from generational trauma and so forth. And that's really where the work is on a daily basis, And the work it's never going to end, because we're not living in the middle of nowhere in the countryside where everything is beautiful. I don't have my own garden, grow my own food. It's all just the invisible enemies from the outside needs to be brought under control on a daily basis. And that's kind of where the work is, whether it's through breathing, whether it's through working out. But when I work out now, I'm actually listening to my body, meaning what's happening within myself. And then I know if I do a little bit too much, I don't feel as balanced anymore. So I gotta pull back on that a little bit. And it's really about, yin and yang needs to be balanced in the male and in the female, because it's a masculine and the feminine energy needs to be there. And yes, as I'm stepping into marriage, the masculine has to take over a little bit. You want to provide, as a man, you want to be there. You want to kind of hold the household together, protect on an emotional level, as well as, like taking care around the house and so forth. But in general speaking, then as we eventually having children, then she needs to be in the feminine a little bit more. So if you look at the broader picture, so if you have the yin and yang sign as a relationship, as a couple, you still balance it out, which is very healthy. But it always just really comes down to how can I be the best version of myself on a daily basis, and then if you look at people like David Goggins, yes, push, but if you push on a physical level every single day, eventually you neglect a lot of other things, which is the emotional and the mind, and you can read all the books in the world, but if you don't really implement that into your day-to-day life, which means like take a fucking day off and just rest, like be with yourself and take time to like breathe and journal and like go really inward. And this is the kind of stuff a lot of men particularly don't really want to talk about, because it's like, it's still very woo-woo, and it's like something, I don't need to do that, I'm like a hard guy, it's like, no, if you want to grow, if you want to be versatile in all those areas, meaning you want to be really good as a human being, you have to work all those angles. Otherwise it's like the physical part eventually fades, and if you overdo that, it breaks. So it's like finding that balance within yourself, and then just being like there for other people. Because in the end of the day, what it comes down to, what I believe and what I have got told from many mentors I had, is really, you can follow any strict diet, you can follow a crazy workout regime, it all doesn't really matter. What really matters is like, how much do you love yourself, and how much do you show up for other people on a daily basis.
I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, Tattoo Away. Tattoo Away is a new innovative way to remove tattoos. I'm going through the process myself. It's incredibly fast, and it's painless, and it's just a more effective way of removing tattoos. So I just want to give a shout out to them. If you're interested in this new innovative process, their link is in my description. And if you would like to get connected with them directly, please reach out to me and I can help you with that. Now let's get back to the show. How did you get to this point in your life? Because you grew up in a small country town and you came out to the States to pursue modeling. Was there like an aha moment or a person that came into your life that opened, like you said earlier, it showed you the door to this exploration of yourself and just like peak performance? And because that is interesting, like, because it's not like you grew up and your parents did this and they taught you, or like where was your discovery?
I'd say it was like multiple mentors over the last 10 years. It was one of the first, as I said, this big photographer, Bruce Weber, back then. The first shoot we had, he's very in tune with himself. He's very spiritual. And he said to me, he's like, Jules, you have to be, when it came to the modeling stuff, he's like, you have to be adaptable, and you have to be almost like an actor. Anything you want to become in that moment, you should be, and you're able to become. So back then, of course, I was in my mid-20s. I didn't really know much about that or think much about it. But now when I think back, it's like what he basically told me, it's more of a life lesson, It's like, okay, if you be adaptable in life and you can be anything you want to be, then you reach your goals, And that's really what it is. So he was a big one. And then when it came to, over the last year particularly, I met Gary, who was a founder of Human Garage. He taught me a lot about all of that. And then a couple of months ago, I met another person, Ian Clark, he healed himself from cancer 20 years ago. He's 67 now, and he's a big mentor. And he kind of like made me understand how important like perfect health as a goal is. Because when you have that as a North Star, everything else falls into place. And in order to achieve that, you have to love yourself a lot, because you have to do certain things. You have to be willing to do certain things to get there.
Yeah.
And it's not just like working out. Like it's the smallest part of it. It's like, okay, how can you clean up all the stuff that you have accumulated over the last decades of your life to get that out, whether it's toxins, whether it's environmental impacts and so forth. So there's a lot of work to be done on that end as well. And eventually, when I realized that, I was like, okay, I just had really an aha moment myself. I guess it was, sometimes I do play around with journeys like psilocybin, like mushrooms and so forth. So for some reason I had this calling like a couple of months ago, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do something by myself at home on a Sunday night. And I did that, and I got a lot of clearance, and I do believe I connected to God, and I got told a bunch of stuff. And it's really, the bottom line was just really be present with yourself, and all this stuff, whether it's diet, whether it's working out, it's just noise, because the noise is what distracts you from who you truly are. So I believe we all have a soul. Everyone has a soul, and everyone's soul has been around for a very long time. So in this lifetime, the soul chose this body, your soul chose your body, and we call it a meat suit. And we're here to have an experience.
Yeah.
And that's the human experience. So how can we make it the most beautiful experience possible? And I don't believe anymore that's by chasing fame, that's not by chasing money, that's not by chasing a body, a workout routine, or whatever it is. It's by being as present as you can in the moment. And then everything else will come along the way.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, we have to have there's somewhat of a kind of like a little blueprint. We all know you got to eat healthy, you know.
Yeah.
Can't go, oh, I'm here to eat McDonald's every day, and then I'm waiting to feel really amazing. It's not going to it's not going to happen. And then movement is key, you know, hydration, mineralization, releasing tension out of the body, working with your fascia. But the biggest part is really like breathing and hydration as first, because when you over breathe, hyperventilate, your body's in constant stress.
Yeah.
And then when you don't hydrate proper, so if I drink plain water, liters a day, and don't add any minerals to it, it strips my body from minerals. It restricts the fascia. Everything gets really tight, causes more stress.
Yeah.
So if I take care of those two at first, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, now I feel better. And then you want to do more. It's almost like a ripple effect. You know, you want to get better. Okay, what can I do on a daily basis? And I'm looking at it like when it comes to working out, what's the least amount of effort I have to put in to get the best results?
Yeah.
So it's really working smarter, not harder. And because if I go hard for, let's say, for 90 minutes a day, I can make sure that those 90 minutes affect the rest of my day pretty much in any shape or form.
Yeah.
Whether it's emotionally, physically, or just like me being completely disconnected because I'm exhausted. So there's a way to live where you integrate movement, integrate working out into your day, where it actually gives you energy rather than sucks it out of you, you know? So, and it's really, when you look at, in Chinese medicine, they talk about life force, you know, qi. So how can that's why a lot of people in China do like qigong. It creates life force in your body.
Yeah.
So, but you don't have to do qigong, in my opinion. You can just do other things.
Yeah.
As long as you're present with your breath and with your body, you can create this energy. And then, you know, when I start working out now, I used to push, but now I know, let's say I want to do 5 sets of an exercise. Most likely by set 3, I'm like, okay, I'm good. Because my body response is like, you can go harder, but you're going to pay a price for that. So you pay tax back on that later in the day.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. And then this is the most important part. It's a death of the ego multiple times a day. And this is really something I'm working on a daily basis. I don't struggle with, but it's a reminder of myself. Every day is like, okay, nobody cares. It's the ego that cares. It's like if I tell myself I need to run 10 miles a day in order to get validated, because I'm in this community where everyone runs, and if I don't run 10 miles a day, I'm not part of that, that might not be the right community then.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter no, and in the end of the day, even in this community, nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
I realized that I did that for a very long time, where it's like I got really into running, and then it's all about like, it wasn't about the running anymore. It was about the outcome. How fast can I go? How many miles can I put down? And then the second I finished my run, I needed to post it on social media, so I get validated.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, that's amazing, but nobody actually cares. It's just the ego talking all the time. And it's the same with everything. So the less I have my ego involved, the more I have a death of the ego on a daily basis. The more I'm actually present with myself, and the better outcomes I have in everything in life. Yeah. Whether it's in my relationship, whether it's on my personal level, whether it's in business, whether it's in working out. Because it's like, if I just push, I'm never going to get stronger. I just tear down muscle every day.
Exactly. What are your thoughts on like supplements, like protein powders and all these things that people invest so much money in, thinking that they're going to take them and then like see these massive results? Is there like just an all natural way to reach peak performance, or do you feel like you have to implement some type of supplements in your life?
I mean, look, there's definitely a lot of noise out there, obviously, as you just said. Yeah. And I do believe that certain supplements are very, very beneficial, because our soil is not what it used to be anymore. So the vegetable that they grow, everything, even the food like meat, anything, the amount of minerals, the amount of vitamins is just not there anymore. So we have to kind of like compensate that in a sense. Yeah. I have a few supplements I'm taking on a daily basis. So one is it's just a seed trace minerals. So it's trace minerals I add into my water. Then I take a shilaji, which is a raisin found in the Himalayan mountains, super high in minerals as well, folic acid, which also just helps your body perform on a certain level, you know. And when it comes to protein powders, you know, I feel like you can take them. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't believe that anyone needs as much protein as everyone says.
Yeah,
because
like
there's
200
a lot.
grams.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that, and I've done it multiple times in my life, and I pretty much any diet on this planet I probably did. And the bottom line is really anything extreme. What I noticed for myself eventually throws the body off. So if someone eats 200, so if I eat 200 grams of protein a day, what's going to happen? My body doesn't even use all the protein. So there's something, the body turns basically the protein into glucose. It's called gluconeogenesis. And it's not an easy process. It takes a lot of energy from your liver and your kidneys to really clean all that out and like turn it into this. Yeah. It's possible. And can people do that? Yes. But what's possible doesn't mean it's optimal.
True.
So, and I just read another study yesterday where our bodies turn over up to, I believe it was up to 250 grams of protein itself every single day. So there's something nobody talks about, but it's also nobody wants you to know in a sense, because whether it's the supplement, whether it's the food industry, they want you to eat meat. They want you to eat, and I'm eating meat. I'm not vegan or anything. It's more about how much do we actually need. So I played a lot around in the past with fasting, right?
Yeah.
So the longest I did was 7-day water fast, and
jeez,
every time I would do a longer fast, I was like, I feel so much better. Like, how can the biggest thing for me was like, how can I replicate my day-to-day life so I feel the same way I was feeling on a fast? And what it comes down to myself is really on a personal level. I don't feel for myself that I need an X amount of calories. So depending on the output, but all those numbers that get thrown around, I don't apply that on myself. I feel the best when I eat actually less.
Yeah.
And when I I don't eat food in the morning, and I played around with this many times. And the longer I'm on sort of like, whether you call it intermittent fasting, I don't completely restrict calories throughout the day, but it's more, I'm keeping it very light. So for example, I would have coffee, or tea, I put in some MCT oil, sometimes butter, sometimes almond butter, whatever it is, a little bit of collagen, because collagen doesn't really trigger mTOR. So mTOR is like the thing that activates the receptor that activates muscle growth and so forth. So if I turn this off, don't turn that on, my body still is essentially in a fat burning state. So, and I only have really a big dinner. I still eat somewhat, like potentially, like if you want to count it down to calories, maybe 300 to 500 calories throughout the day, and then I have a bigger dinner. But what happens is like my mind, my body is just very alert, and I feel just very light within myself.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have also, if I wake up in the morning, have a large breakfast, and there's a detox phase in the body, which is from 4 a.m. to noon. So in that time, all you should really do is like detoxing, meaning like you go to the bathroom and you just get rid of all the stuff that doesn't serve you anymore in your body. So that gets hindered when you actually start eating a lot of food in the morning, because you just pile up. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, I feel sluggish, I feel tired. And it really, I played around with it. It doesn't even matter if I would just have eggs and avocado, or if I have oatmeal, or if I have just a lot of fruit. It's the same thing for me. I don't feel the same, because it's just, I done it over so many years now. I tried out so many things over the last years, where what I realized is really comes down to how does my body feel? Yeah. What's my intuition saying? Yeah. And in the end of the day, it's always less is more, in my opinion.
I love that, because it's like, it almost makes us all as individuals feel like kind of free from this society that says you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to eat small meals all throughout the day, you need breakfast, or you need to do, like you said, it's almost like getting in touch with yourself and finding out what works for you, because you're obviously in great shape, but you eat like pretty much once a day, right? But you still have energy throughout the morning, you still feel clear-minded, but people associate like, well, if you don't eat, you're not going to have any energy. If I'm the same way, like if I eat anything in the morning, it just throws me off. So sometimes I'll feel like I'll have like a lunch with somebody, business lunch. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to just not eat anything, because then it's like, yeah. But then again, it's like almost like, well, what's more important? The ego, right? I'm going to care what this person thinks if I don't eat, or am I going to stand firm on what's best for me? So that's a powerful message that I'm really glad that you're speaking on that, because many people feel like almost imprisoned by, like, they have to do something to be this way. You know? Yeah,
I mean, look, it comes down to really what gives us energy, right? So prana is life force, prana is breath. So how come I'm not dying if I go 7 days without food? I know people, they went 40 days without food and they weren't overweight. Yeah, they lose some mass, they lose weight, but you still function. Yeah. So I'm not saying everyone has to fast all day long every day. It's more about if you have your nervous system under control, right? If I wake up in the morning and I taped my mouth at night and I slept like a baby, I practice nose breathing through the night because my mouth is taped, and I wake up in the morning, I should be able to get out of bed, have energy. I'm not grabbing caffeine first thing in the morning. I hydrate a little bit with water, and I might do some more breath exercises, and then I'm ready to go. Yeah. So most people wake up and they're like, if I'm not eating first thing in the morning, I can't function. Yeah, people mislead they have a hunger for air. So they don't breathe right. They potentially mouth breathe at night, snore. They have sleep apnea. They wake up exhausted. And then the first thing they want to do is eat, because food grounds you. So food is very grounding.
It's like comforting.
It's comforting. Yeah. And they're like, okay, now I feel there's something there and I have energy. Yeah, we need, this is a topic some people might disagree on that, that we actually need food for energy. Because it's like, if you really dig into this, there's people around the world still. I believe it's a number around like 30,000 people around the world actually don't eat. They pretty much like breatharian. Wow. Is it something I want to do? No, because I get a lot of pleasure from food. It's part of my life, and I love food. I love to cook. I love to have meals, so forth. It's more about when you know about that, it opens a whole different world, because it's like, am I really hungry, or am I just potentially bored? Potentially I'm not breathing proper, or I'm just thirsty, So a lot of those things really play a big role into that for me, where I'm like, okay, I don't need to eat this much food. Yeah. And then on the flip side, it's really the easiest for me to stay in shape.
Yeah.
And I played around over the last couple of months with a lot of different things once again, because I'm like, I read something new and I tried it, and when it came down to food, it was always, the more I ate, the worse I felt. I would not be able to get out of bed. I feel exhausted. Yeah, because your body uses 80% of the energy to digest food when you eat. So if I have 80% all the blood in my stomach, everything is there to digest, my brain doesn't work as well, my body doesn't function as well. And then, yeah, you see there are many fitness influencers. Oh, I'm eating 4,000 calories a day. Look, I'm super shredded. I'm in amazing shape. I work out every day, whatever. Yeah, and again, comes back to what I said earlier. It's like, what's possible doesn't mean it's optimal. Yeah, a lot of people can run a marathon every day. There's people out there, they run a marathon almost every day. That's great. But it's like, does it really add value and quality to your life? Or is it something perhaps you're running away from? And ego has taken over, and you're doing it to get validated, and then to be able to post it, social media posts, and say, look what I did, look this, look that. And I'm like, for me, it's really, I want to block out all the noise. Yeah, I still have a pretty vanity parted within myself, where I'm like, okay, there's a body image I want to have of myself. And that's ego. But I'd also believe at a part, there's a healthy way of looking at things. And I just call it discipline. Because, these days, if someone is like, oh, someone is in amazing shape, this person must have so much discipline. But it's more like, potentially a lot of those guys I know on that field, they actually don't care about their body. What they care is about their life. And the body is a byproduct of their lifestyle. So yeah, I still have that, and I'm never going to lose that, because I don't want to be 50 and have like a gut and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's more like I still can live a lifestyle with discipline and following through for myself. And then you can also use the word discipline. It's nothing different than self-love. But if you overdo anything, if you need to do certain things on a daily basis, for example, I used to have a time where like I need to do 100 pull-ups every single day. And I would get really nervous where if I don't have the ability to do that, or if I would travel and I don't have a pull-up bar, what am I doing? So again, what happened is like I became a prisoner of my own lifestyle. So you don't want to do that, because if your routine, if your drive restricts living life itself, then it's most of the time not sustainable. And you also don't want to do that. Again, like I believe there's seasons in life, right? And for me, it was very important to go through that season. But I meet now that I connect with so many 20-year-something old, like early 20s, mid 20s year old guys on social media, which think the same way as I do now, but they're 10 years younger. So I'm like, this is amazing.
That is.
Because then we as older guys doing something right, because we influence those kids. And then they start doing that. So by the age they 35, in 10 years, they're so much more ahead of the time as what we were. And it's kind of like, it's just, we evolve so differently as humans these days through social media and everything. Because if you look back like 50 years ago, what we're doing at 35, they might have done like when they were 65. And a very few percentage of them, because they were actually interested in that. So now it's like, okay, we can actually, and this is the large goal for me, is just like influencing as many people as I can with like simple lifestyle changes, and then having a community around that. Because if you can reach out to someone, whether the person is in the 20s or the 60s, male, female, doesn't matter, and there's somewhat of a core principle that everyone ingrains in their life, then I know I've done my work right. Because in the end of the day, we as humans thrive in community, and we're meant to live in community. We're not meant to live as a lone wolf, And again, there's so many people, they just go on their own path. Yeah, they reach all the goals, but there's a large disconnect to everyone else around them, and then their community becomes very, very small. Because it's not relatable, whether it's fitness or anything else extreme.
That's absolutely true. And it's incredible like how much wisdom and value. I mean, you have. I mean, we talked for a little bit over coffee, but I'm like learning so much within this experience. And as we close out, I literally feels like we've been talking for 10 minutes.
I know, right?
How can people find you, get in contact with you, learn more about what you do? I feel you post all the time on Instagram. You're giving this free like advice away to people, and I mean, I'm definitely looking at it and seeing ways I can improve. So how can people find you and be in touch with you?
Thank you. So the easiest is really social media. Instagram is Jules_Horn. And then on Twitter, I just started a X account. So it's Jules Horn 01. But more so in about like the next 2 weeks, I'm launching the website Mindful Movement.
Okay.
So it's the mindful movement with a D. So it's moving and mending. And this is really the entire coaching program, what I put together. We start with a 12-week course, nervous system regulation, it's breath, hydration, and then some movement. And that's really what I want to bring into the public, into prisons, helping eventually veterans and everyone who's really in need. And trust me, 99% of the population is in need for something like this. And it's not something you have to sit down for hours a day. It's more something very simple. It's small incremental changes over time lead really to a large transformation in everyone's lives. And that's what I want to do and what I'm seeing myself doing, and I want to be eventually doing more public speaking engagements and so forth. That's where the vision goes, and I feel mindful movement is going to do that,
Yeah, well, sign me up. I definitely want to do it, and then after that, I'll help you get into the prisons.
Yeah,
and then we can go in there and speak to those guys and help you with that. So
amazing.
Appreciate you, Jules.
Thank you, my friend.
So much, man.
I appreciate you.
God bless.